Hello and welcome to another episode of World Konnect, a show where we get you the latest from around the world. Now, it's not just the American presidential elections that have taken center stage. Spaniards will go to polls once again, nearly 4 months after the country voted inconclusively in general elections. We'll get you more on that. Also in the show today, we get you the story of a man who is doing his bit to help Afghan children get access to education. All of this and much more in today's World Konnect. But first, let's start the show with the focus. Syrian ceasefire in shambles as fresh spate of fighting batters Aleppo and surrounding areas. Syrian special envoy calls on US and Russia to salvage the barely alive ceasefire. In US presidential elections, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton get closer to nominations. All eyes now on the Indiana primary next week. Spain to vote once again in June after efforts to broker a coalition government failed to fructify. Spaniards disappointed as they preferred a coalition government over re-election. It's hard work for Venezuelans as the country faces a massive energy crisis. President Maduro announces 2-day working for public sector employees. And an Afghan teacher takes knowledge to the doorsteps of children in remote areas as he rides his bicycle daily to distribute books. Syria's troubles do not seem to end anytime soon, and this time airstrikes at a hospital in Aleppo have killed as many as 50 people. Now, Aleppo has been at the epicenter of a military escalation, and talks in Geneva to end the 5-year-old war were undermined when the main opposition alliance walked out. A report.
Rescuers pulling out a young girl from the rubble of a destroyed building in Aleppo. The building was hit by an airstrike in rebel-held Al-Khalase neighborhood. The girl miraculously survived the attack, but not everyone is as lucky as her in the area stormed by fresh bombardments and shelling. As Aleppo and surrounding areas were battered by a fresh spate of bombardment and strikes, a hospital supported by international medical charity MSF was hit on Thursday, killing as many as 50 people, including 3 children. Most heart-wrenching was the killing of the city's last pediatrician in the air attack. Medicine Sans Frontiers condemned the attack on Al-Quds hospital and said it would continue to work for the vulnerable Syrians.
It cannot be admitted that a fully functional medical facility in the middle of a war, taking care of the most vulnerable, is hit as a result of a military action. Our position is of absolute outrage and condemnation of this attack.
Syria's Aleppo is at the epicenter of a military escalation that has threatened peace talks in Geneva to end the 5-year-old war. Talks in Geneva were undermined last week when the main opposition alliance walked out, citing ongoing violence and calling for proper implementation of a UN resolution. As the situation worsened, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon met Syrian Special Envoy Staffan de Mistura in Geneva. Mistura called on the leaders of the United States and Russia to salvage the barely alive 2-month-old ceasefire. Meanwhile, the White House has said that the US and Russia are working to refresh the agreement for a cessation of hostilities in Syria. A temporary partial truce was announced on Friday late night by Syrian troops in most parts of Syria, but Aleppo was not included. The Syrian army said the truce would last for 24 hours in Damascus at the eastern Ghouta region, outside the capital.
In the latest from the US presidential polls, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are a little over 300 delegates far from getting their party's nominations. Now, what will be interesting to see is the next fight in Indiana that will decide the course of this rather interesting battle.
With the US presidential election primaries giving a twist to the tale almost every week, in the latest fight, Donald Trump won in all 5 US states that voted on Tuesday, while Hillary Clinton backed 4 out of 5. Trump called himself the Republican presumptive nominee after victories in Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. After her win, Clinton said that her campaign was setting bold, progressive goals to improve lives in the United States. The war of words does not seem to end between the two, and the latest battle just added fuel to fire.
Hillary will be horrible, absolutely horrible, on economic development. She will be terrible on jobs. She knows nothing about jobs except for jobs for herself.
Well, if fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
With the win in 3 states, Hillary Clinton has now 88% of the delegates that she needs to become the first woman nominated by a major party. Trump's result, on the other hand, brings him closer to the number of delegates that he needs before the party's national convention in July. Both are about a little over 300 delegates short of the number required to reach the halfway mark in the respective parties to back the presidential nomination. Trump's rivals, Ted Cruz and John Kasich, have already shifted their attention to forthcoming states. As part of a new campaigning pact, Kasich will give Cruz a clear path to tackle Trump in Indiana, with Cruz reciprocating it for Kasich in the Oregon and New Mexico primaries. Opinion polls suggest that Trump has 39% support in Indiana, Cruz has 33% and Kasich has 19%. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders' campaign has started laying off staffs following several losses to Hillary Clinton and Democratic primaries in key states. Now all eyes are on the next primaries in Indiana that will take forward this nerve-wracking contest, which will determine not just American history but also influence world history.
As Venezuela grapples with a massive energy crisis that has shaken its economy, President Nicolas Maduro has announced a 2-day working for public sector workers. But that's not the only headache Maduro is having. His political rivals have launched a signature drive for his recall referendum.
The Vice President announced a new necessary measure for the public sector to work on Monday and Tuesday as we go through these extremely critical weeks in which we are doing everything to overcome the crisis.
President Nicolas Maduro announced a 2-day working for public sector workers. The measure intends to save energy as Venezuela grapples with a massive energy crisis that has shaken its economy. Water levels in Venezuela's main hydroelectric dam, Guri, has drastically reduced as a result of a major drought. The dam serves 2/3 of the national power needs. As the crisis deepened, government was forced to declare emergent steps. Reducing the number of workdays was one of them. But the decision has not gone very well with critics. They argue that a reduced public sector working week would hurt national productivity at a time of recession. Generally, government has also announced cutting electricity supplies, an unpopular measure for a population already struggling to obtain food and medicine. Power cuts that began from this week would continue for 40 days. Officials blame the El Nino weather phenomenon, but critics have accused the government of inadequate investment, corruption, inefficiency, and failure to diversify energy sources. But it's not only the energy crisis and drought that are giving sleepless nights to Maduro administration. Soaring prices and slowing growth have already been worrying the administration. Since the declining trend in global oil prices began in 2014, Venezuela had been at the receiving end. Food shortage and skyrocketing prices have forced many Venezuelans to skip meals. A recent survey claimed that many of those earning minimum wages can't afford food for their families. But that's not all for the embattled President Maduro. Accusing him of widespread corruption and mismanaging the crisis, the opponents have started a signature campaign seeking a referendum to remove President Nicolas Maduro as sporadic looting and protests over the economic slowdown were reported. For President Maduro, it's an all-round battle, be it political or economic. A lot is at stake for him, who has defiantly vowed to fight all that comes in his way to overcome hurdles.
In Mexico, independent experts commissioned by the Inter-American Panel on Human Rights have handed their final report on 43 missing students to their parents. Now, the trainee teachers were abducted in September 2014. While the government has reportedly said that the students were killed by a drug cartel, the claim has been repeatedly questioned. With this report coming in, all eyes are on the Mexican government now that has been accused of hampering the probe. Well, what happens when a wife of a mountain guide asks her husband what they do up there, and in reply she's asked to find it out herself? Well, she does just that and even goes a step further to take up the challenge of conquering 8 peaks. Lydia and 10 other women from Bolivia are setting foot in what is traditionally considered a man's world, one peak at a time.
Lydia Huelas, an Aymara indigenous woman from Bolivia, had been living a quiet life of a cook at the base of Huayna Potosi, a 6,088-meter-high Andean peak outside of capital La Paz. Intrigued by the heights, she asked her husband, Eulalio Gonzalez, who was a mountain guide, what they do up there, and he suggested that she find out for herself. 48-year-old Lydia did just that with 10 other indigenous women. The Cholitas, as women in that region are called, have taken on the 8-peak challenge now. The women who mostly worked at the base of the mountains as cooks and tour guide assistants along with their husbands targeted to conquer the peaks, which are all over 6,000 meters.
I prepared myself bit by bit, traveling with tourists, and that is why I was ready to climb the mountain. But it is always a big effort. In terms of physical preparation more than anything, resistance is necessary to climb a mountain. It is difficult but not impossible.
Equipped with modern mountaineering gear, the Cholitas swapped their iconic bowler hats for mountaineering helmets, the only change in their traditional attire. The group have climbed 5 peaks so far, their latest conquest being Illimani, the highest summit in Bolivia's Cordillera Real range.
It was like we had arrived in heaven when we reached the top of Illimani. The clouds were below us and emerged as if from a volcano. We could see everything from above. It is gorgeous. The walls of Illimani are very difficult to climb, but we managed it. I am very happy to have climbed Illimani.
Armed with hereditary adaptability to the thin air in high altitudes, the women climb on the tough South American mountains, braving snowstorms and heavy winds. Determination has got them this far, and their ultimate dream now is to plant a Bolivian flag on the summit of Aconcagua, the highest mountain outside of Asia, at 6,961 meters above sea level.
After Spain voted inconclusively in general elections, Spaniards will be going to polls once again. This comes at a time when efforts to broker a coalition government fail to take shape. Now, even as the polls are likely to be held on June 26th, the question remains whether political parties who failed to work together in the past few months managed to do so in July.
Nearly 4 months after the country voted inconclusively in general elections, Spaniards are going to the polls once more, with the last-minute efforts to broker a coalition government failing to fructify, and King Felipe saying that he would not propose any new candidate for Prime Minister. Way is paved for fresh elections. The polls are likely to be proposed for 26 June and will be confirmed by the Parliament next week when it gets dissolved. Many believe that even the upcoming election is not going to change much in the December poll figures. Of the 4 main players, the Conservative Popular Party, led by incumbent Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, won maximum 122 seats in the 350-member Congress. The Socialist Party, led by Pedro Sanchez, was second with 90 seats, but took no time to rule out a deal with Rajoy. Left-wing anti-austerity party Podemos secured third place with 69 seats, while centrist anti-corruption party Ciudadanos won only 40 seats. The Podemos could not guarantee a majority to socialists, while Ciudadanos were too short of numbers to really help anyone. Politicians' failure to come up with an arrangement for government formation has left voters disappointed, who are already frustrated with a growing rate of unemployment that has reached 21%. A recent survey indicated that nearly 80% Spaniards favor the coalition government than going to polls again. Now each party is trying to project itself as the one who did its best to strike a deal. With Europe still reeling under economic slowdown, European Commission has asked Madrid to further cut down budget deficit. The onus to address this request will be on the upcoming government. Austerity measures had cost Prime Minister Rajoy his majority, and left-wing parties are making a case for anti-austerity regime. But even as the political parties gear up to woo voters all over again, the question being asked is, will the same politicians who have failed to work together in the past couple of months manage to do so in July?
Well, moving on, key suspect of the Paris attack, Salah Abdeslam, has been extradited to France on Wednesday. Now, Abdeslam was then charged by a French court for murder connected to terrorism, association with a terror group and illegal possession of explosives and weapons. The 26-year-old was arrested in Belgium on the 18th of March. Abdeslam is placed in a maximum security prison near Paris and is being held in solitary confinement. Ukraine marked the 30th anniversary of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster on Tuesday. A giant steel-clad arch worth 1.5 billion euros has been built to enclose the stricken reactor site and prevent further leaks for the next 100 years. In the early hours on April 26, 1986, a botched test at the nuclear plant in the then Soviet Ukraine triggered a meltdown that spewed deadly clouds of atomic material into the atmosphere, forcing tens of thousands of people from their homes. The world's worst nuclear disaster till date. Friedrich Nietzsche once said those who were seen dancing were considered insane by those who could not hear the music. But that's not the case in Germany. Call it a new lease of life for telephone booths or a new age disco revolution. Once you see this, you'll realize that a quick jig in a phone booth is pretty much a possibility. Take a look.
Lights, music, dance and fun unlimited. That's how a disco is known to all of us. But this one is genuine for being the smallest nightclub, if not in the world, then in Germany at least. The disc housed in a telephone booth offers people quick and all-time entertainment, and they are liking it.
There were loads of lights and sometimes it was dark. It's really cool.
Echt cool.
You come, select songs and options using touchscreen, insert coin and go on. The mini club also gives you the option of clicking pictures while dancing, like there is no tomorrow.
What is missing in Berlin are exchanges between people. We party alongside each other, but there's no more community. The tele-disco is the solution to the problem. You go in with 5 mates, you dance, look at each other.
As telephone booths gradually disappear in the mobile phone era, many have found second life. While at some places, tele booths are being used as mini libraries, some others are used for film production or decoration. Partygoers, however, love the idea of the exclusive dancing for a small group of people, an unforgettable experience offered by the booth-turned-nightclub.
Let's get you updates from Africa now. South Africa's High Court ruled on Friday that a 2009 decision to drop 783 corruption charges against President Jacob Zuma was irrational and should be reviewed. Now, the decision in April 2009 to set aside the charges allowed Zuma to run for president in elections the same month. This comes as another setback for the leader, who faces calls for his resignation. The president's office said Zuma will give consideration to the court's ruling. And now here are some more interesting stories that caught the attention across the world. And in showbuzz, veteran actor Morgan Freeman received the 43rd Chaplin Award from the Film Society of Lincoln Center in New York. The actor, who has worked sheer magic with his roles in films, won an Oscar for his work in $1 Million Baby in 2005. Oscar-winning actress Alicia Vikander scoops the coveted role of Lara Croft in the new Tomb Raider movie. According to Hollywood reports, the Swedish actress will play the role earlier portrayed by Angelina Jolie. For Myanmar's Kayan tribe, bronze coils around their necks is not just a fashion accessory. They start wearing these rings as toddlers and the number increases as they get older. For years, this has been an attraction for outsiders. But now Kayan women want the world to focus less on the way they look and more on the products that they have to offer at their stores.
Wearing a beautiful neck piece is every woman's dream. For the Padang women, the stack of bronze coils on their necks is an essential part of their everyday life. Their neck piece defines Myanmar's Kayan tribe. The women generally start wearing the coils at the age of 5 or 6 and continue to increase the number of coils as they get older. The weight of the metal compresses their shoulders down, rather than elongating their necks. It gives the woman an appearance of having a long neck. A grown-up woman can have up to 25 rings weighing almost 5 kilos, and it remains a part of their body all lifelong. According to a traditional myth, the women wear it to protect themselves from the bite of a tiger. The women of the tribe also distinguish themselves from nearby settlements with this accessory. For years, they were a tourist attraction in Thailand, where they had migrated for economic betterment.
Asking them to pose for photographs for money is acting like they're in a human zoo. Instead, people can buy their products, like food, handmade crafts, and souvenirs, to support them.
The tribe is now returning to the native Myanmar and setting up shops to sell their traditional wares.
I was unemployed, so I built this shop and have been running it for nearly 2 months.
The women now try to change focus from the way they look to define their culture with the products they make and attract tourists in their hometown, so that all Kayan girls from Thailand can return to Myanmar. Mupar herself came home after nearly 14 years of saving.
If we can get many tourists here, we want all the Kayan girls from Thailand to come back.
As the tribe is yet to obtain economic self-sufficiency, the Kayans are hoping that their rich culture will soon draw attention and is recognized distinctly in the market as much as the long neck coils.
They say books are the doorway to knowledge, and Afghan teacher Sabar Hosseini is leaving no stone unturned to make sure that children around him get easy access to them. Now, Hosseini cycles to isolated villages in the mountains that do not have any access to schools and distributes books. Here's the story of Afghanistan's Library on Wheels.
In remote villages of Afghanistan, where knowledge is hard to come by, Sabar Hosseini delivers knowledge to little children at their doorstep. A school teacher from the Bamiyan town, Hosseini on weekends and holidays takes a bicycle loaded with books and distributes it to the kids in distant villages with no schools. Children in these areas, though old enough to be in 3rd or 4th grades, do not know how to read. Hosseini's mentoring instinct sensed the wrong in this, started with the Library on Wheels, through which the children now get a chance to learn, to read and gain knowledge.
When I hand out the books to them, I can see their excitement and joy. It is the joy of being able to learn. I am also inspired.
Hosseini often travels in rugged, dirty roads to get to the isolated villages of the mountainous terrain. For children who often have to assist family from a very young age, arrival of Hosseini and his books is very special.
These books are all very interesting. I often borrow them from the library.
With 200 books brought from Kabul, Hosseini's collection has gone up to 3,500 books. He has set a small library with it, now near his home, which has become Bamiyan's first library. Hosseini's hope is that there will be a school in the mountainous, isolated villages one day.
Well, this brings us to the end of this edition of World Konnect. Do send us your feedback as you always have. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldkonnect.ddnews@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. But do you know, for a few hours on Friday, the White House became the Blues House as Washington hosted the 2016 International Jazz Day. Here are the glimpses of the performance by Aretha Franklin. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.
Jazz at the Blues House.
I've been so many places in my life and time. Sang a lot of songs and I made some bad rhymes. on stages with millions of people who are watching me. Now we're alone, and I'm singing this song for you.